Now that provides a ready transition to my second last point, and that is authority in the church. As the Catechism says, and I just quoted you the passage, the Catholic Church accepts the full authority of Scripture, Old and New Testament, whole and entire. But so too does Protestantism. The difference is Protestantism stops there. Sola Scriptura, that's the great maxim of the Protestant Church, sola Scriptura. But Rome does not stop there. Rome accepts the full authority of Scripture, but says also we have the Church Fathers, the living teaching office of the Church, the sacred magisterium, to ensure fidelity to the Apostles' teaching. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm a lawyer, and I can tell you with absolute conviction that the notion of self-interpreting law is what Dr. Johnson once called nonsense on stilts. That is why we need courts. That's why we need quasi-judicial tribunals and arbitrators. Even the most arid statute or regulation is subject to alternative and conflicting interpretations. That's how lawyers make a living. Scripture requires to be interpreted. That's just a fact. And the only question is, who will interpret it? The notion that you can leave interpretation to each individual conscience is what produces the innumerable schisms that characterize Protestantism, which after all began in schism. Even a small denomination as the Canadian Mennonites have within them 13 different churches, ranging from the ultra-conservative Amish to the relatively liberal Canadian Mennonite Church. This fragmentation into sects and cults began in Luther's own lifetime, and must, I think, be regarded as inherent in Protestantism. If every person is the judge of what Scripture means, the inevitable result is a religion of one. Scripture and tradition cannot be separated any more than oxygen and hydrogen can be separated in water. Now, I think I can demonstrate this easily and unanswerably. If anybody wants to try and answer it in a question session, I'd be interested to see how you get around this. So here's my proof of this. Prior to 1965, and most of us in the audience remember 1965, we're not teenagers here, a lot of us do anyway, remember 1965, not a long time ago. Prior to 1965, every Protestant denomination in Canada taught that divorce, contraception, abortion, and homosexuality were contrary to Scripture and were grave moral sins. In the last 4 decades, the United Church of Canada has been in the forefront of abortion advocacy. The Anglican Church ordains openly homosexual priests and bishops. The Presbyterian Church accepts without the slightest cavil contraception and divorce, etc. So, ask yourself this question: has Scripture changed since 1965? The Protestant churches certainly have. They've changed 180 degrees. Well, true, you say, but those are moral, not doctrinal issues. Okay, well, let's talk about doctrine. Whether you want to talk about the divinity of Christ, the virgin birth, the physical resurrection of Jesus, any doctrine you want to take from Scripture, you will find nothing in Orthodox Christian belief to which one Protestant church or another has not publicly repudiated. The Reverend Greta Vosper is a United Church minister in Toronto. The title of her latest book is, quote, A Church Without God. Now, I won't elaborate on this, that's like shooting fish in a barrel. How can anyone take seriously any utterance coming from such a church? The answer is that fewer and fewer people can take anything they say seriously, which is why their attendance is dropping like a stone. Or if I can borrow one of the Malcolm Muggeridge's favorite similes about the Protestant churches, they're like NATO, a headquarters without an army. Now, I realize that this sort of plain speaking is officially frowned upon within the Catholic Church. I gave a similar talk in Ottawa and was told by the priest afterward that was terrible. It's not nice, he said. Ecumenically speaking, it's considered to be in bad taste. Towards other denominations, we're supposed to be inclusive and non-judgmental. Well, speaking as a recovering ex-Protestant, let me say that I am much more fearful of being yoked together with unbelievers, something that Scripture explicitly warns us against, than I am about observing all the ecumenical niceties. And unbelievers I believe, is not too strong an expression for much of contemporary Protestantism. Catholics respect tradition. Tradition means paying attention to what G.K. Chesterton called the democracy of the dead. The Catechism puts it this way, quote, "Through tradition in her doctrine, life, and worship, the Church perpetuates to every generation all that she herself is and all that she believes." Critics of the Catholic Church, it seems to me, sometimes fail to recognize that her structure is not horizontal or egalitarian. It is hierarchical and authoritative. The governance model is not the Parliament of Canada, but Christ and his disciples. They were not governed by majority votes, but rather subject to him who said that he must always be about his Father's business. So is the Church. Now, I'm not going to say any more about the virtual collapse of Protestantism in the last decade or two. There's a terrific article in Recent First Things by Joseph Blocham on it, if you want, called "The Death of Contemporary Protestantism."